Welcome back to the Deep Dive. This is where we take the sources you send us. Could be articles, notes, research, or like today, some really intense lyrics, and we really get into the hidden story.
Yeah, and today it's a single track, Thing for Ya by Critching Gate.
Right. And we're plunging right in because, well, there's a lot here.
There really is. This deep dive, it feels necessary because this song, it's just so much more than your standard heartbreak track if you look just at the words, the lyrics themselves. It's this really dense, sometimes contradictory emotional map. So our mission really is to get past just the surface level, okay, unrequited love, we get that, and really dissect the dependency, the clashing desires for closeness versus freedom.
And that sheer emotional volatility, it jumps off the page.
Absolutely.
It's such a complex situation. I mean, you've got the speaker who sounds, well, desperate for connection on one hand, like completely reliant on this one person's okay.
It'll depend.
But then at the same time, they're really pushing back against, the usual structure, the vulnerability that comes with a real relationship. It's like this internal battle.
A war, yeah, waged against themselves and the person they're fixated on. And you see that conflict kick off immediately.
Right from the start.
Yeah, the main tension is laid out right there. It defines the speaker's whole world as this kind of crisis rooted in feeling completely off balance emotionally. And how fast it escalates. That's what makes it so gripping. And honestly, a bit unsettling.
Okay, so let's start digging into that foundation. We're calling this first part the anatomy of unrequited obsession.
Right. So the song just throws you in with the confession that starts this whole kind of destructive loop. It's that classic painful friend zone feeling, right? But it's said with this really modern, blunt edge.
Yeah, I got a thing for you.
Yeah.
And you don't give a fuck about me.
Yeah.
We're just friends and I don't want to be. That language choice, you don't give a fuck about me. That hits hard, doesn't it? It's not just like indifference. It feels like he's saying the other person knows how invested he is.
And chooses to ignore it.
And just dismisses it. Right away, that sets up this incredibly lopsided power dynamic. He's all in, and the other person basically holds all the power through, what, calculated indifference.
Precisely. And when that power balance is so off, the label itself, we're just friends, it stops being just a description, doesn't it? It feels more like a prison.
Like a cage, yeah. That he's desperately trying to get out of. This isn't just quiet disappointment, it's active pain, because he clearly thinks his whole happiness, maybe even his identity, depends on changing that label.
Definitely. And then every little thing, every interaction, a text message, whatever, it takes on this huge significance for him.
While for the other person, it's probably just casual.
Completely casual. That imbalance guarantees he's always looking, searching for some tiny sign, a hint that maybe they feel something too, a hint that just isn't there.
And that desperation, it only gets worse because of this gap between what people think is happening and what's actually going on behind closed doors.
Right. The source material really nails that specific modern pain, having your private reality totally clash with what everyone else assumes.
Lyrics describe this isolation, even though he seems included. Everybody that we know thinks I get to take you home, but I end my nights alone wishing you would hit my phone. For you listening, this really shows that pressure to perform relationships.
So absolutely. The social front versus the private suffering.
Think about how much that must mess with your head.
Yeah.
I mean, this fantasy he has is seemingly validated by everyone around him. Friends, peers, they all assume he's won this emotional prize he wants so badly. So he's putting on a show during the day.
It's almost crueler than just being outright rejected, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. Because that public validation gives him just enough false hope to keep the obsession going.
While the reality, the phone staying silent, ending nights alone, it just constantly undermines that hope. And the social pressure means he's carrying this double weight. The loneliness of actually being rejected and the stress of keeping up the act.
And that loneliness gets visualized in this really stark, physical way. The lyrics mention, "You got me heartbroken laying in the back of my car."
That line just jumps out.
It really does. The car. Why the back seat? It feels so specific, so resonant. But a car is usually a place you're just passing through.
Exactly. It's not home, not a safe bedroom. But it's enclosed enough, maybe, to let you just fall apart for a minute, even though you're technically in public.
I see the car here as, the perfect symbol for being in emotional limbo. He's physically stuck, heartbroken, but in a space that's meant to be temporary. Maybe he just dropped the person off. Or drove around aimlessly, trying to deal with it.
Could be. He's just stuck in that feeling. Can't drive forward emotionally, but definitely not at peace either.
And the back seat, specifically, That often suggests being passive, right? You're the passenger, not the driver. It really underlines that theme of having no control we talked about. He's literally in the back, overwhelmed, can't steer his own life, just stuck by the heartbreak.
And plus, being in a car, crying, there's this tension between the intense private emotion and the public nature of the space. You're visible, potentially, but still totally isolated.
Yeah.
It's like a space where the raw feeling can burst out, but it's definitely not a place you can actually heal. It reinforces this idea that he has nowhere truly safe to process this pain. It shows how huge, how all-consuming this obsession has become.
That image in the car, that physical despair, it's pretty shocking. But once the speaker figures out that the performance and just waiting aren't working, well, the emotion has to go somewhere. And it seems like it just skyrockets.
Which leads us right into the next phase, where the stakes get incredibly high and the emotions become really extreme.
Okay, so now we're moving beyond just feeling heartbroken into, well, extreme emotional dependency. This is where the lyrics really show the full extent of the speaker's attachment issues, maybe.
Yeah, attachment disorder is a good way to put it. And this next part contains probably the most dramatic moment in the whole song. As analysts, we have to look at that statement about communication. It really functions as the peak of his dependency in the text.
Right. The persona says, this phone rings. If you're not calling me, I'll consider ending it all.
Okay, so critically, we need to analyze the function of that line within the lyrics. It's obviously hyperbolic, extreme language.
Definitely.
In the source material, it works as the absolute ultimate expression of feeling controlled and despairing. It frames the speaker's entire existence as conditional. Like, their survival literally depends on getting that validation from this one specific person calling.
It's a really powerful and frankly kind of terrifying way
Yeah.
to show complete codependency. The absence of a specific name on caller ID becomes this catastrophic event. It tells you, the listener, that this person has basically handed over their self-worth, their will to live, to this one-sided connection.
And what's key is how immediate that reaction is supposed to be. It's not like a slow slide into depression over weeks. It's presented as this hair trigger response just to the phone ringing.
Yeah.
The lyric suggests that this level of desperation is actually fueled, maybe even accelerated, by how uncertain the whole situation is. The desire is so strong and the lack of reciprocation so painful that his stability is completely hostage to whether or not the other person decides to reach out.
And naturally, that kind of dependency starts to sour into resentment, which brings in the whole jealousy aspect, right? Fueled by these invasive thoughts about the other person being with someone else.
We see that psychological intrusion right away when he's thinking about how somebody's getting you off. And it's not just general jealousy, it's tied up with this intense focus, almost resentment, towards the other guy.
The existing partner.
Yeah, the one who's seen as the obstacle to the connection the speaker wants.
But then he immediately tries to negotiate his own position in this drama. He jumps to this defense. And I don't want to be a one-night stand in slaw just because your other guy won't let you have him.
That reveals this really complex, layered resentment. First, resentment towards the main relationship. He sees it as maybe flawed or restrictive, won't let you have him.
Right.
Second, resentment towards the person he wants for potentially just using him as a temporary fix. And maybe deepest of all, resentment towards himself for even being willing to consider that role.
He wants the closeness, the intimacy, but he hates the idea of being just a backup plan, you know? A consolation prize used only because the main relationship isn't working out. He's trying to elevate himself from rebound guy to essential secret, maybe. But he's obviously still trapped for how much he wants them.
And this whole tangled state, the vulnerability, the desperation, it gets summed up in that really potent metaphor. You got me by the throat.
Well, yeah. That image is incredibly violent almost.
Yeah.
Totalizing, being held by the throat. You're not just controlled, you're literally being suffocated.
Can't speak, can't fight back.
Can't breathe, can't live,
Yeah.
basically. It just screams this complete paralyzing lack of agency.
And it connects right back to that extreme dependency we were just talking about. The speaker feels completely paralyzed, stuck, can't move on, but can't get the affection they need either. The control the situation has over him and maybe the other person's indifference feels absolute, suffocating. It just keeps that emotional crisis at peak level.
It's like this whole non-relationship is literally choking the life out of him. The extremity here isn't just about sadness, it's about him detailing this catastrophic loss of control over himself, over his life.
Absolutely. And once someone articulates that level of dependence, they kind of face a crossroads, right? Either completely fall apart or find some way to defend against the pain. Which leads us directly into the most contradictory part of the song.
Okay, this is where the song does this incredible psychological balancing act. After basically saying his life depends on this person calling, the speaker then immediately rejects the very thing that might solve it, a stable, committed relationship.
Yeah, he states it emphatically. I don't need to be your boyfriend. I don't want to have to love you.
It's the most fascinating twist, isn't it? How do you square that? Life or death dependency on a call 1 minute, and then this total rejection of commitment the next. Is this really what he wants? Or is it some kind of psychological defense?
I mean, I struggle to make those two lines fit together logically if he genuinely just wanted some compartmentalized, no-strings passion.
He wouldn't be heartbroken in his car.
Exactly. He wouldn't be threatening total collapse over a phone call.
Right.
So I think the only reading that makes sense, given everything that came before, is that this is a massive defensive move, a retraction of vulnerability. He's experienced the complete failure of putting his emotions out there. He basically put his life on the line, emotionally speaking, and got shut down.
So he's defensively changing the definition of winning. He can't win the emotional game, so he'll try to win the physical one instead. Like, if wanted commitment causes this much pain, fine, I'll just redefine what I want so it hurts less next time.
Precisely. He's moving the goalpost to somewhere he feels he might actually have some control. If he can just get the physical intimacy, he can maybe tell himself he got what he wanted, and that protects him from the sting of being rejected for actual love or commitment.
And that shift in focus pushes him towards chasing this really specific, intense kind of intimacy. The fantasy gets very detailed. I want to fuck you how nobody's ever fucked you.
Yeah.
And he wants to be a secret, something we could keep between us.
He desperately needs to feel special, unique, exceptional, even if it's only physically. If he can't be the boyfriend, the permanent partner, then he needs to be the unforgettable, unmatched physical experience.
Right. He wants a connection that's intense enough to compete with the other guy, but secret enough that he doesn't have to deal with the emotional weight he just swore off.
It's like wanting an emotional shortcut. He craves the deep connection and validation that intense physical intimacy can sometimes mimic, that shared secret, that unique physical bond.
But at the same time, he's demanding the emotional distance you'd have with, like, an acquaintance. He wants the status of, I could be him when you come through, but absolutely refuses the responsibility of, I don't got to be your man.
And this attempt to swap physical intensity for emotional stability, well, that's where the whole contradiction really falls apart. And the lyrics actually acknowledge that.
Which brings us perfectly to the sleepless cycle. The hookup doesn't actually bring relief or fix anything, it just feeds the anxiety. The lyrics spell it out, turning sleepless nights into sleepless nights when you come through.
That line feels like the final, crushing realization of how pointless it all is. The very interaction that was supposed to be the solution just creates a new kind of exhaustion.
So the general anxiety and loneliness, the regular sleepless nights, they just get replaced by the high-stress performance and physical drain of the sleepless nights when you come through.
It's a totally non-restorative exchange. The physical act doesn't solve the root problem. It just gives this temporary, maybe exciting distraction that actually guarantees the cycle of longing and pain keeps going. Each hookup just becomes another source of specific, intense anxiety.
He hasn't found peace at all. He's just swapped one kind of suffering and waiting for another kind. This temporary connection that probably just makes him even more attached and miserable in the long run. And that emotional burnout, that exhaustion, is what makes the final turn in the song feel inevitable.
Exactly. Given that intense, relentless emotional drain we've just mapped out, the speaker logically hits a wall. It leads to this demand for things to change, for some kind of resolution, the ultimatum.
This feels like his attempt to claw back some tiny bit of control.
It's definitely a shift. From that passive, paralyzed despair we saw earlier to an active demand. Even if it's a desperate one, the lines are, "So if you want me, baby, tell me now, 'cause I don't plan on staying, waiting around for someday when you'll maybe see me how I see you now."
I don't really read this as him suddenly finding self-respect, though. It feels more like a survival tactic. Like he's just completely exhausted. The never-ending waiting around has just become too much emotionally, physically, maybe even just too draining to keep singing about.
That feels like the key insight, yeah. The ambiguity, the constant guessing game of the friend zone, trying to figure out his value. It's become more painful than just getting a clear rejection would be.
Right.
He's forcing their hand, demanding a clear answer yes or no. It lets him maybe control the timing of the pain, even if he can't control the final outcome.
It's like a necessary escape hatch, even if it's conditional. He's saying, look, I can't keep pouring energy into maybe. Just give me the yes or the no so I can finally move on, one way or another.
And to really get the full picture of this emotional roller coaster, we kind of need to place Thing for Ya in the context of the EP it came from, Why Do I Hear Breathing, from 2023. The source info lists the other tracks.
Yeah, we see titles like Dangerous State of Mind, Never With You Again, Arson, and Breathe. Okay, this track list doesn't exactly scream calm and collected.
Not even slightly. This whole EP seems to reinforce a narrative of constant emotional upheaval and conflict. Dangerous state of mind. I mean, that perfectly captures the instability, the dependency, the extreme reactions we've been dissecting in Thing for Ya.
The whole EP paints a picture where the speaker is just living in this high-risk emotional zone.
Definitely. And think about arson. Arson is about deliberate, dramatic destruction, maybe self-destruction.
That connects back to that conditional existence, right? The ending it all line. Like, he's willing to just burn everything down if he doesn't get this connection. The EP creates this whole universe where intense emotional risk is just the baseline.
And breathe, or maybe the lack of breath implied by the EP title, Why Do I Hear Breathing? That connects right back to the suffocation metaphor. Being held by the throat.
Yeah.
It suggests this emotional crisis isn't just mental, it's physical, it's visceral. Like the simple act of existing, of breathing, is being compromised by all this psychological trauma.
So the EP really works as this complete story of a crisis. Thing for Ya, with its back and forth demands and rejection of love, it's just one really vivid snapshot within this larger, unstable, emotional world where the speaker's always right on the edge.
And to really nail down where the song fits, let's quickly look at the thematic neighbors, the artists and songs suggested in the You May Also Like section. These act like signposts, showing us what kind of conversation Thing for Ya is part of right now.
Okay, first is Arden Jones, Serotonin Highs. That title alone points towards focusing on, like, chemical mood states, anticipation, needing something external to feel okay inside.
Yeah, and that's such a feature of modern confessional music, isn't it? Linking Thing for Ya to Arden Jones suggests that this thing he has for the person, maybe it's less about genuine affection and more about chasing a feeling, a neurochemical rush.
So he's not looking for mature love, maybe, but for that hit, that dopamine spike, the serotonin high, that hasn't happened yet, as Jones puts it.
The obsession becomes almost like an addiction then, not just about love, but about needing this external thing, this person, to regulate his internal state. They're essentially the drug he's desperate for.
Okay, then there's 347 8 Ands, Be Happy. That song's about getting over someone who treated you badly and focusing on yourself again.
Right, so that track is almost the opposite path thematically.
Yeah.
Be Happy is about reclaiming yourself, walking away, refusing to be put down.
And our speaker in Thing for Ya is doing the exact opposite. He's actively choosing to stay, to tolerate the indifference, just waiting for that someday when they'll finally see him differently. So that contrast really highlights how far he is from emotional health or independence.
Definitely. Then you've got yesterday's Breathe, which mentions being isolated, alone sleeping on my friend's couch. That echoes the imagery we talked about earlier.
And back in the car, yeah.
Exactly. Like the car, the friend's couch reinforces that feeling of being in a temporary, uncomfortable, isolated state after some kind of emotional fallout. The crisis unfolds in these non-permanent spaces, highlighting how displaced he feels not just relationally, but physically and emotionally adrift from any real comfort or stability.
Then there's the push for instant intimacy with Illenium and Ian Dior's First Time. That one asks, are we skipping a step? Because I really don't mind.
Which directly mirrors our speaker's desire back in section 3, right? To bypass all the emotional stuff and just jump straight to the physical connection. So placing Thing for Ya near that track shows it's part of this cultural moment that sometimes values accelerated intimacy, maybe sees the physical act as a shortcut to feeling connected, often without building any real foundation first.
And lastly, Machine Gun Kelly, Nothing Inside. That talks about skeletons in the closet, lost hearts.
Yeah, this kind of placement sets up an expectation, almost a genre convention, that the speaker is coming into the situation already wounded, unstable, or emotionally damaged. So the extreme things we hear in Thing for Ya, the dependency, the jealousy, the self-destructive talk, they're not just isolated incidents, they're presented as parts of this broader emotional damage that's being confessed openly.
So taking all this context together, what does it mean for you listening? Well, connecting Thing for Ya to these artists and themes pretty much confirms that this song is deeply embedded in this very contemporary genre, a genre that focuses on raw, confessional lyrics about mental health struggles, messy relationships, and these really specific, intense emotional crises.
It's music that really grapples with how exhausting, complex, and, yeah, sometimes addictive modern attachment can feel.
Yeah. This song is just a really powerful, incredibly detailed breakdown of what happens when you have these profound emotional needs crashing headfirst into a deep fear of vulnerability, all while trying to keep up appearances.
It's a masterclass in emotional contradiction, really. Hashtag tac tac outro.
So our deep dive into Thing for Ya really revealed that this track isn't just about a crush. It's about the incredibly high stakes of trying to survive emotionally when you're completely dependent on someone who doesn't feel the same way.
Yeah, we've unpacked that deep conflict between wanting connection and feeling total despair. We saw how the speaker kind of defensively retreated into demanding this intense but non-committal physical thing.
Like a desperate attempt to control the vulnerability.
Right. Only to discover that the physical connection didn't fix anything. It just kept this cycle of exhaustion going.
And that final demand, the ultimatum, it really showed the unbearable cost of just waiting indefinitely. It forced a need for a decision just to end that impossible contradictory state he was trapped in.
So building on all this analysis, the lyrics, the EP context, the thematic links, we want to leave you with a final thought to chew on. Something provocative. When artists put out these incredibly raw, contradictory, sometimes deeply destabilizing confessions like this in their music lyrics that literally hinge existence on a text message, what's really happening, is it just catharsis for the artist? Or is it inadvertently doing something else, like modeling, maybe even commercializing or accelerating emotional distress for listeners who might be seeking validation for their own intense, unstable feelings?
Wow.
How do we as listeners engage critically when the art presents the emotional stakes as literally life and death?
That is a heavy question to think about. The emotional stakes are incredibly high in this type of music, and Thing for Ya is just a stunningly precise example of that complexity. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Market Mile fun fact. Legend has it that the old Dog Leg Bowl in the mile is watertight. The OG architects were nautical engineers.